my BFF marrying my SAer, and invited my daughter, who is the result of SA to be flower girls. And now claims I'm ruining her wedding. I know how bad that sounds, and I'll start by admitting, this is fully based on my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and disgust. I 27F have an amazing daughter, a 12F, and I'm married to the most amazing man, T27M, in the world. My daughter and I have been living in Japan for the last 9 years, the home country of my husband. I returned to the UK for the first time since leaving this month, August 2023, to meet my nephew, my best friend, R26F, and I have been best friends since we were 3 years old. She has always been my rock through everything, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter. As you can see, I gave birth to my daughter when I was 15. Her biological father, D33M, has had no interaction with either of us since the night I got pregnant, nor has he ever shown an interest until now. To address the elephant in the room, D said me when I was 15, and he was 21. I come from a very religious family, aka, my father is a deacon. There was no option. However, I absolutely adore my daughter, and do not equate her to that horrible experience. She saved me, and I have spent every day loving her thanks to a lot of support, therapy, and her just being the most loving little sweet peach out there. A few other things to note. 1. She doesn't know the nature of her conception. How do you explain that to any child under any circumstances? 2. My husband adopted her, and she knows they're not related biologically, but they absolutely adore one another. 3. D gave up all parental rights in a plea deal for a lesser sentence. Now, on to the main thing. I came back to the UK to meet my nephew, but I booked to stay for a few weeks to visit my family and friends. It was all a surprise. No one except my mom knew we were coming over. It was very fun and lovely to see everyone's shock and surprise. My daughter is having the best time with her aunts, and they're all so excited to see her in person. I decided to also surprise R. Turning up at her house, ringing the doorbell, and seeing the man who has ed me was definitely the last thing I was expecting. I assumed, by some twisted and cruel coincidence, that I got the address wrong, but then R comes to the door, calling him babe. It honestly felt like a horrible, cliched teen movie where the main protagonist caught her best friend and boyfriend together. I knew she was seeing someone, but she said that she wouldn't let me meet them until it was in person. She's my best friend. I had no reason not to trust her. I know that makes me stupid as hell, but I just never could have thought she'd do this. It's been 3 days since then, and she has been blowing up my phone, begging to talk. I finally gave in because, as established above, I'm a moron. She said she was sorry for how I found out about them, and if I could forgive her for falling in love with my ex, which not only pissed me off, but also my husband, who knows everything this whole ordeal put me through. I cut her off, saying I couldn't have this conversation, especially since my daughter was in the room, and she replied, saying something like, well, she'll have to find out about the wedding soon for dress fittings. I asked her what she meant because no way did I hear that correctly, and she said that as her soon-to-be stepmom, she wants her as the flower girl. As we have always said since we were growing up that our kids would be flower girls or ring bearers, I told her in absolutely no way, shape, or form that my daughter would be attending that wedding. She said I was being petty and jealous, and that I couldn't stop her, real dad, from being a part of her life. We've not spoken since this morning on the call, but I'm already receiving messages from our mutual friends saying that I've caused her to break down and ruin her wedding. But I genuinely believe I am not only morally right, but also legally right. So, I'm putting my most personal story online and asking you Ada. Verdict. NTA. Update. 1 day later. Just to prevent any disappointment, this isn't a proper update, but more of a post for more information with a little update at the end. You can skip to that if you want. Firstly, thank you to those who took time to assure me that I'm not, in fact, crazy for believing myself to be in the right. Secondly, to those saying this is fake, please manifest that harder so I wake up from this nightmare. Thirdly, my bad for the title, I also would have taken it as my BFF marrying her own dad. Answers to questions I've seen or received. 1. Moving to Japan at 18. I am in a very lucky and privileged position to have an uncle who moved to Japan following his deployment in the Navy many a year ago. Additionally, my parents wanted me to finish high school and 6th grade before shipping me off to the other side of the world to avoid judgment from the community. If they could have sent me to Neptune, they would have. 2. Plea deal. I use this term as it is more commonly known. But if you want an accurate depiction of what happened, I'll do my best to explain. But I am A. Not a lawyer, and B. talking about a period of my life that I do my best to forget. D was charged with the statutory as A of a minor, which is a Category 1 for harm because it resulted in a pregnancy. It was also considered a Category B for culpability because it wasn't premeditated and was played off as a, if the age of consent was lower, this wouldn't be an issue type of thing. There are no plea deals in the UK, but there are plea bargains, which are used to encourage people to plead guilt, so there is no trial or a shorter trial if it's already begun through offering lesser charges or reduced sentences. There were other factors involved. He pleaded guilty, had no previous arrests or convictions, had a letter from a psychiatrist saying that he lacked maturity due to some disorder, and showed remorse during the hearing. Because of this, his charge was reduced to a Category 2 harm and Category B culpability case. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he was placed on the Essex Offenders Register until he was notified of being removed. He served around 3.5 years of that sentence before being released, and was on the Essex Offenders Register until last year sometime, because a review showed he had changed or something. I'm not really sure. My friend explained it to me today, but we're like 3 rows down the grapevine at this point, so take that with a pinch of salt. 3. Deacons. There are around 738 active deacons in the UK currently. My father is not one of them. He hasn't been since 2019, as he has been living in the US and looking after my grandmother. Not that I have to explain, but currently only 2 of my 4 sisters live in the UK, with another living in Sweden to study and another living in the US. I recognize completely the privilege we have to live all over the world. If this means you think I'm lying, then I repeat, please keep manifesting that so I no longer have to deal with this. 4. I am many things, but my daughter is my whole world, and I will do anything to protect her. I was not on here to see if I should allow her to go to the wedding. I had already decided that there was no chance in hell that was happening. Don't call me a bad mother. Everything I have done has been what I believe to be in her best interest. 5. My BFF was the first person I told about what Dee had done to me. It was her and her mom who took me to the police station. It was she who sat with me crying in the school toilets when I was sick. It was she who watched all the videos sent to me by the baby support class. I don't know what changed. She has been going through a lot, facing many issues through COVID. But there is nothing I can think of to explain this change. Update. My husband has tried to change our flights, but due to the air traffic control issues in the UK, this hasn't been possible as of yet. But we will keep looking into it. I have contacted my lawyer. He says that there is no legal claim from their side, so that has eased me slightly, but I'm an overthinker, so my mind continues to rage on with all possible outcomes. With regards to talking to my daughter and explaining everything, she isn't completely in the dark about the circumstances. She knows it was a bad situation, and whenever she has asked questions regarding her paternity, I've done my best to explain to her without outright stating, "You were a product of SA," because I don't want her to ever question whether she is loved or wanted. She is going into that really vulnerable age, and I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible about it. But my husband and I have decided that, due to the circumstances, we need to tell her. I've already contacted my therapist, and she has arranged for a chat with a child psychologist when we return. My daughter will then have the option of speaking with my husband or me, or having sessions on her own. I've been dealing with my trauma for years, and it was selfish on my part to wait this long. But my childhood was taken away by this man, and I believed I was protecting her. But I now know I was protecting myself. Ours number has been blocked on all our phones, and she cannot reach us through social media either. For the time that we remain in the UK, she will never be without my husband, my mother, or myself. Thank you all for your words of support. My mind has been spinning nonstop, but I'll power through for my daughter. Edit. My friend's mother passed away in 2020, before she had ever mentioned a partner. But I know for a fact she wouldn't approve. She would have kicked her arse up and down the street. She was a wonderful woman. Relevant comments. It sounds like your friend was never your friend. I wonder what her end game was. She didn't want to tell you who she was dating until she could tell you face to face, right? Did she just expect that you'd be understanding or something? And the whole, "I'm her stepmom and her father, and I want her at the wedding, blah blah blah," is super delusional thinking. She either never believed you, or she's let him completely manipulate the situation in her mind. Surely her mother doesn't support their relationship. Quiet ad 960. OP's reply. Her mother unfortunately passed away at the beginning of 2020. I know she absolutely would not have supported it though. Are people really getting so desperate for a partner that they choose to be with a known child attacker? I can't even fathom how she even started to talk to him, let alone develop a relationship with him. It's just wild to me. Federal Arachnid 689. OP's reply. If I take her account true of the partner she met through lockdown that she wouldn't let me meet, it was Facebook. He reached out to her, and she saw him in a new light. Honestly, I think back to some of our chats about her partner and just feel so stupid. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, I guess. Update 2. Hi there. I never thought I'd have to be one of those people doing an update on a Reddit thread. But here we are. Welcome back to what is, hopefully, the final update needed for this horrific experience. First of all, I want to thank you all again for your words of support, and for reaching out to me privately and in the comments. I believe I've read most of them, but there were so many that I couldn't reply to them all. Secondly, we're back in Japan. Home never felt so warm. We arrived back yesterday morning, my in-laws being godsends and picking us up at that awful hour. On to the full update and everything that is to come. My husband and I sat down with our daughter and explained that we'd be leaving early, and honestly, that was so difficult in itself that I almost backed out of explaining everything to her about Dee. But she is honestly the most amazing human in the world. It felt as if she was the one getting me through it. Her and I had the conversation as my husband fulfilled a promise to my brother-in-law to make his famous pad thai before we left. The conversation itself wasn't that bad. It turned out she was already privy to some information that was Sa-related. My father, the delightful man that he is, explained last Christmas that some sins are easier to forgive, and I'm not exactly sure of the wording he used, but he essentially warned her that my bastard childbirth was forgiven by God because it was forced upon me, but she needs to stay pure to be led into heaven. I had heard part of the conversation, but not the full thing, and I got into an argument with him about the way he speaks to my child, and how he's not to force his beliefs onto her, as I refuse to raise my daughter the same way we were raised. This is not an invitation to voice your religious beliefs or opinions. You do. No judgment here. Essentially, after his comment and her own very sneaky research, she put 2 and 2 together, matched my age, and concluded the nature of her conception without telling me. Obviously, for me to confirm it, that was a whole other thing. We both went through the 5 stages of grief in that short time. I apologized for keeping her in the dark, and this conversation will obviously continue throughout the years, but on her terms. She's a bright girl. She is very aware of things around her, and I know that she will go on to do amazing things. I'm also trying to prepare myself for any questions, arguments, or issues she brings to me. I expect that once we settle back home, there will be further emotions, and I'm willing to work through my own trauma in order to help her through her own. My husband is the greatest support either of us could have. She has her consultation with the therapist on Thursday. She wants us all to go together, and then she can decide what course she wants to take from then on out. She's just been catching up on her sleep yesterday and today, and without going into the details of what went down with R, she understands not to reach out to her, and if she receives anything from her, to tell me or her dad straight away. She pushed for a few answers, but my husband, working his usual magic promising her ice cream, encouraged her to settle for the very basic answer of, your mom and R had a falling out, and it's pretty bad. She's smart though, so that answer won't work for long, but it gives me time to discuss it with my own therapist and the child therapist. So we'll see where to go from here. I've had no communication with R or anyone who reached out to me to complain that I ruined her wedding. One friend went as far as to confront me at the pharmacy on Friday, but luckily my sister was ready to fight, and he backed off. No one knew we were leaving other than our immediate family, so there was no hassle there. I truly hope that one day I'll understand what R has done, what has happened to her, and our former friendship that led to this. But alas, for now, it remains unknown. I truly hope this is the end of the saga, that we can start moving forward, and that I can begin my daughter's journey of recognizing that she is not the product of a hateful and violent experience, but instead the product of love, beauty, and comfort given to her by her father and me. Sorry for the boring ending, but it's my life, so I'm not actually sorry as I'm over any type of drama. But thank you to those who cared and reached out. May none of you reading this ever feel this betrayal, hurt, or destruction. Second story. OP just found out that his older sister is actually his biological mother. My older sister, let's call her Rose, and I have had a great relationship since I was a baby. We were raised in an amazing adoptive family, and she has always taken care of me. I grew up in a very warm and loving environment, but from what I was told, I was lucky. I was told the story of how I and my sister had 2 drug-addicted parents who never took care of us. They never bothered feeding us and used to leave us at a junkie friend's house for days to go out partying. When my mom was pregnant with me, she smoked and got drunk. Luckily, I turned out pretty fine pretty often, and when I was born, my sister was the only one who took care of me. When I was 2 months old, they left us both in a mall and left. We got help from an old couple who also turned into our adoptive family, and we contacted the police, but my parents weren't at the house, which looked like a homeless cave. We never saw them again, and after several months in foster care, The couple that helped us throughout the whole way, BTW, agreed to adopt us. Today I'm 19 and Rose is 34. I still live with my adoptive family, and she lives about 20 minutes away, so I come and visit her at least 3-4 times a week. So a couple of months ago, my friend offered me to take a DNA test to find out some information about my heritage, since my sister wouldn't speak much of it. After the results came in, I found out some pretty interesting things like being 50% Ashkenazi Jew. I found out later that I had an Aunt 33F in the system. I immediately reached out to her, let's call her Janet, and we agreed to meet in person. All that without telling Rose a thing. When we met up, I could see we had some similar characteristics, like the same hair color and the same eyes. We tried to figure things out, so I asked her if she has a brother or sister, and she told me that when she was 13, her 14-year-old sister got pregnant while being drunk with her junkie boyfriend, and a month after giving birth, she ran away with the baby after some pretty intensive fights with their parents. They never found her, and they stopped looking after 1.5 years. I connected the dots and asked to see a picture of her, so we went to her parents' house. Mom wasn't home, and my father died 3 years ago. When I saw the picture, I knew. This was Rose, 100%. Rose is my mom. We were never abandoned. We didn't have junkie parents, and she fabricated the entire thing for me and our adoptive family. I immediately gave Janet a hug, told her that it's too much for me right now, and asked her to keep it a secret for now. I went to my best friend's house, told him everything, and for a week now I've been sleeping over at his place. I told my parents and my sister I was at his house because he bought a new game that we both wanted for a long time, and I avoided talking to Rose much. I can't look her in the eyes right now, let alone tell her I know the truth. What the hell am I supposed to do? How should I handle this? Should I tell her I know? Edit. My best friend just took me out for a movie and a drink. I'm not that drunk right now though. I thank you all so much for your warm replies. They made me look at the situation a bit more clearly. I have decided to break it to Rose this week, but I need some time to think about how to tell her I know. I don't know if I should try getting there slowly or just break the news to her somehow. I even considered bringing her sister with me, but I genuinely think she will be pissed. I'll keep updating as soon as I've decided how to tell her. Right now, I am going to bed to sleep it over. Edit 2. After seeing some comments asking how the adoption process went, I decided I needed to explain some things. First of all, it's worth mentioning that the adoption process wasn't immediate, and it took about a year between the time that happy couple found us outside the mall and the time they adopted us. We were in foster care at that time, and Rose used to keep in touch with them, and they would come visit us once or twice a week or so, I was told. I don't know what to believe now. Eventually, Rose broke down in tears for them and told them she hates foster care, and that her little brother me would grow up here, and she couldn't bear that thought. At that time, they decided to try and adopt her and hired lawyers and stuff, and after a few months, it was legal and done. At least, that's what I was told. I don't think my adoptive parents knew, but if they did, then that story is probably a lie too. Update. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everyone for their honest replies. It really helped me to get my feelings straight and get ready to confront her. So after a week of avoiding, I came to her house with a picnic basket by surprise, so I will have a chance to speak with her. She was happy to see me, and I told her to sit down because we needed to talk. I started things by saying that I know that she has a secret that she's been hiding from me for years. Her face turned red, and she started crying like hell. She knew what I was talking about. I told her the story about the DNA test, about Janet, and basically what I told you guys in the last post. Well, after she calmed down a bit, she told me the truth. She told me how she got drunk at a party and slept with one of the jerks who does nothing but weed every day. He didn't really care about a future kid and was like, yeah, whatever. Apparently, she found out that 10 years ago, he was stabbed in prison after sitting for drug dealing, assault, and armed robbery. She told me how her mother used to convince her father to talk me out of the idea of keeping the baby. They would constantly fight with her. When the baby was born, they told her on the spot that she brought shame upon the family, and they would not help raise the baby in any way, meaning she would have to work in the meantime to have money for her baby and sometimes for herself. After a couple of months of loaning from her friends and juggling between working and taking care of me, she had a huge fight with her parents and told them that if they are not helping financially and barely in any sort of way, she and I are better off without them. As they sent her to her room, she escaped in the middle of the night, hitchhiking to a neighboring country, and by morning she was there already. She tried to take care of me for a few days. She found an old abandoned house that used to have homeless people coming around every now and then, and she took me to the mall when I started crying. She started crying too. The couple that adopted us immediately came to our aid, and asked if we had lost our mother. Rose jumped on the opportunity and came up with a story and an alias. The police figured out we were not in the system for multiple reasons. We were raised in foster care for a year and a half, until the couple that helped us decided to make the effort and adopt us so we wouldn't be separated. It took them a few months, and a couple of lawyers managed to adopt us both. Rose knew all along that her parents were looking for her. They came to their senses after a day or so. She reached out to them and told them in a letter that she is fine and is taking care of herself and me. She is not homeless, and she found a nice couple to help her with the baby. She made it clear to them that she was never coming back, and they should stop looking, and a month later they stopped. A few years later, her father went on a secret quest to find her. She was 18. After so much time searching, he found her, apologized, and after a while, she forgave him and kept secretly in touch with him. He met me a few times, and I knew him as one of Rose's old friends from the park. He helped us a few times, and apparently they would meet up once every 2 months secretly. Ironically, I'm glad I got to know him before he passed, even if I didn't know who he really was. BTW, the adoptive family, never found out about the whole thing. So after hearing this, I told her we missed a lot by not knowing she was my mother, and I told her I understood she did the right thing. I pulled out an "It's a boy" sign from the picnic basket and some snacks for a late baby shower, and we hugged for an hour or so, had a lot of fun, watched a movie, and I headed off to my parents' house to have dinner with them. I'm glad she's my mother. I feel for the first time in years complete. I don't care she lied because she did it for the greater good, and I honestly can't imagine my life right now if she didn't. Thanks, Reddit, for helping me get my feelings straight and helping me out mentally to cope with everything that happened. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.